Hello everyone, and we are live here for SEO Meetup here in June. Oh my gosh, we have made it. Thank you so much to everyone who is tuning in. Again, we are here with the infallible, absolutely extraordinary Peter Mead. Thank you so much for being here, bud. Really stoked to have you on board. So Peter is going to be going through WordPress SEO, of course, and we've got here as well Jacob King-Stanley, who is our general manager of Studio Hawk, a man that needs very few introductions, but I'm absolutely stoked to have you on, guys. So how are you going?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you,
nice.
Pete?
How are you going, Peter?
Yeah, going really good. Yeah, all things considered, there's a lot going on, obviously, in the world, but we're just doing the best we can and getting on with SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. You've really hit the nail on the head there. So I'll just do a little bit of initial housekeeping just before we kind of like get into what's going on. Of course, you guys probably would have heard some of the announcements that was announced today. But first we'll just go through some housekeeping. So just to give you guys a bit of an idea, if you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome to SEO Meetup live to YouTube. So, as we all know, we're starting off at 6 p.m. and we're just going to really just go through and do a little bit of, what's happening in SEO at the moment. Like any algorithm updates, any SERP volatility, any highlights, or any interesting articles that have been shared that we found particularly useful or interesting over the past month. And then, of course, after that, we're going to have Jacob Stanley, who is going to walk us through local SEO. And I know that there is so many of you that really applies to. This is a massive. We have a massive client base that has SEO. Local SEO applies to. So I know that there's heaps of really great questions. I know I have a lot of questions for Jake, because like honestly, out of everyone that I know, I don't think there's anyone apart from a couple of handful of people that know more about local SEO than he does. So really stoked to have you on board. Then after that, we'll do a couple of questions. So, you've got the live chat there. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll be monitoring that and asking these guys, after Jake's presentation. After that, then we've got Mr. Peter Mead, the godfather of SEO himself, who will be walking us through WordPress SEO. Now, WordPress is arguably 30% of the web. So we have, again, heaps of clients, and I know a lot of you guys have WordPress websites or your clients are on WordPress. So we're really stoked to be able to go through that a little bit more in depth today. And again, after that, heaps of questions, put them all in the chat and we'll get to them incrementally. So first up, I think, which is pretty much present on everyone's minds, today being July the 7th, we got a bit of a notification today that Melbourne, Victoria at large is going to be going back into the third, what is it? The third kind of
Stage
thing.
3 lockdown. Yeah.
Phase 3 of the lockdown. Yeah. Which I know for a lot of people is going to make it, even more tough. But during this time, it's ever more important, and I'd really like your opinions on this as well, Jake and Peter. But from my perspective, it's like so important to be able to make sure that we're really buckling down on long-term marketing strategies. So SEO is as important as ever. SEO, of course, is like really making sure that you are bringing organic traffic to your websites, and your website is your asset. That is the primary thing that your business has to be able to capture attention online when people are looking. And of course, with everyone stuck at home at the moment, that's just become even more and more prescient. So
can I jump in there and just to kind of add on to what you're saying there? I mean, the practical side of what you're talking about, and what we need to be careful of is that people out there with websites and with businesses don't get caught the same way they did the first time, because believe it or not, there's still people who didn't really get everything on the bandwagon the first time these COVID restrictions happened. Well, what I'm talking about is, people who came to me and said, "Oh, hey Pete, I run a shop or a clinic, or I run something where people, I don't have my web presence sorted out yet, right? And it's just going into lockdown, right? And then they're still trying to sort out their presence online." So yeah, absolutely. So important for people to just really buckle down, get all their web presence sorted out, get their website sorted out, make sure they're getting found in Google, because playing catch up once the restrictions are on, it's not a fun game for those businesses to play. So
yep. On top of that as well, Pete, if I could add, consistency is so important, and I'll dive into this. But for brick and mortar businesses, especially in Victoria right now, I think it's crucial more than ever to be able to communicate with your audience or potential customers and communicate to them things like simple as open hours. Are you going to be open now? Stage 3 lockdown. Where are you at? And being consistent on top of that kind of thing. And I think it's Google My Business is a really great way to communicate with your customers or potential customers and let them know, hey, well, these are the times we're now open, or stage 3 lockdown now means this for our business. I think those that can be as proactive as possible and get in front of their customer and let them know, the earlier the better. And that actually, if they are open or to a certain degree, able to supply a product or a service to their customer, maybe in a different way, if it's online or if it's takeaway, they need to communicate that as quick as possible, because if people can't leave their houses, but they're still going to need food, right? Restaurants need to communicate how they're going to get that food to them. So, I think consistency is definitely going to be important in communicating as proactively as possible.
Yeah, 100%. I really, really think that your Google My Business during this time is really, really important, particularly if you really rely on foot traffic or people coming to your business around your immediate area. Things that you can do with your Google My Business, like pretty much just to echo what Jake said here, change your business hours. Like if there's something that, you're going to be open or close, or, just your operating hours, if you've got any pickup locations or anything like that, definitely change your hours that are on your Google My Business. Or, you can also set some special hours. So, if your business is just temporarily closed, that's something that you can actually indicate to your customers and direct them to be able to engage with you in another way. That's really, really, really important. So that really gives them the best experience if they do Google your brand name and want to find out what's going on with you, or wanting to getting products or services from you. If you're a brick and mortar, that's going to be really, really important. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of my clients are really trying to push gift cards to really support their business. So we've been able to add posts and things like that for those Google My Business accounts and things like that. So sometimes when they get approved, that's a little bit helpful, just to really, really help with that. So they're just ideas that we've been able to try. I know that there's also special attributes for service availability. So if there's a service ability, I know that you can add attributes to your account. Have you guys tried that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Attributes are definitely an important thing to keep on top of, and they do update. That can be easily missed. I've seen a lot of business owners miss new attributes that have popped on, and it's just low-hanging fruit. So definitely recommend spending time on your Google My Business app, or logging in every now and then. Just keep it on top of the notifications. Every time something new comes out, that could be a potential opportunity. And if you're first in, that could be an opportunity over your competitors. So yeah, always be on top of your notifications or your app.
Yeah, 100%.
It's kind of a no-brainer now. It's I don't know. I call it post-coronavirus. This is the real world now we're living in. it's continuing for us, and is that you just absolutely need to be, totally up to date with all your online presence. So yeah, all those things, Google My Business, special attributes, making sure that you've got all the information on your website for your customers. So.
Yeah, 100%. We've actually already got a really good question that's coming through the chat at the moment. Sue Elson asks, just got notified by Google My Business today that I can put a Google banner on my website. Do you recommend this? And what is the best and easiest way of doing it on a WordPress website? That's a great question.
That was a bit of a crossover there. I like it. It's a bit broad. I honestly don't know what you mean to by banner. I'm going to assume the one that you can, is it the graphic maybe you're referring to, that you can actually print out and put on your shop front window? But yeah, I haven't actually seen that notification. Have you guys seen that?
The one that came out today, I don't know which one that would be, Sue, but certainly, there's ways of getting that stuff onto your WordPress site. There's like a bit of schema. There's a bit of schema that Google also made available for people to use on their site. But it just depends what sort of business, what's the nature of your business, and so we probably need to feel free to private message.
Send us a screenshot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and again, like all of the links for Peter and for Jake are listed in the description below. So there's a great opportunity. You can just go out and ask them any direct questions if you have them. Good on you, Sue. Yeah. So it's definitely been a really, really interesting time at the moment, and it's been, obviously a really particularly difficult time. But at the same time, we really need to really pull together and really support one another. If this is one of the great things about SEO Meetup, like this really is a volunteer-based run, initiative that we're really wanting to make sure that if people have questions, if they're needing some support with anything related to SEO, that this is a really, really awesome safe space that they can come and ask any questions that they have. So, please keep sending through your questions. But I think that this is a really good opportunity, maybe just to move on and get into the very first presentation. Jake, if you're ready.
Yeah, ready. All right, cool. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Bada bing, bada boom. Awesome.
We're rocking. Looking good?
Yeah, that looks great.
All right, cool. I'll get it up. Present it. Awesome. Well, guys, honestly, I like the conversational kind of style. So if you have questions, please go nuts, because like Nick just touched on before, now's the opportunity to, I guess, leverage any experience that I've had over the last couple of months. And there's been a lot that's gone on, I'm sure you can imagine. So please, I'm here. I'm more than happy to try and help answer any questions you have, how to leverage, I guess, any opportunities or any struggles that you're currently having with anything in particular. Please feel free. And then Nick, if you want to just jump in and, if you like, and just let me know what those questions are, because I actually can't see them because I have the presentation up. That'll be awesome, and I'll answer them best way I can. Cool. So local SEO. Now, local SEO, first and foremost, is predominantly going to be talking about Google My Business, because it owns quite a large portion of the market share when it comes to local listings. So what I mean by local SEO, for those of you who don't know, local SEO is basically a listing or a directory that is used with the common characteristics are name, address, and phone number. And it's like a directory to be able to find a local business. And it's typically a business with brick and mortar location, or a business where you can actually be serviced. The customer can be serviced if they meet that person at a specific location. So if it's a service-based business, you can meet that customer at their location. But it's in a nutshell, to be eligible, it's face-to-face interaction. So if you've got an e-commerce business, not as relevant unless you have physical stores. So you are e-commerce, but also you have a physical retail store. But if you don't, definitely don't look into doing Google My Business or local SEO as such, because you can actually confuse your customers or potential customers, and they honestly get confused into, are these guys a physical location, are they not? And I've seen that countless of times where people end up at the corporate office and it's actually, there's no real use, and they're actually just looking to purchase on their website. So keep that in mind. So what is local SEO? So I touched on most of it, but look, there's a few different platforms. The most popular is Google My Business. The couple other big places is increasing in popularity and market share, which is really exciting to see. Bing is offering more and more support, which is also really good to see. There's a lot of other places like Apple Maps Connect that's commonly forgotten, unfortunately, because there are still a lot of vehicles that a lot of motor brand or car brands that are still using things like Foursquare, Zomato, Apple Maps Connect. So BMW, for example, they're a classic example of if you're not leveraging other directories outside of Google My Business, then people that are putting in the navigation to maybe go to a petrol station or go to a restaurant or go to get directions to a certain place they want to go to, if they can't use the voice command and get in and can't find that location, then you're going to have issues with people actually getting to your location, which is not ideal. And it's easily overlooked and missed. So don't just, I will talk a bit about citations as well. So directories and citations. So outside of just Google, there are other ones that are really important to consider. And I'm going to really talk about the main parts of what you got to focus on when you do create a listing, how to create it, claim it, and verify. So there's it's generally a pain point when I start talking about verification of Google My Business. I'm sure anyone who's gone through that process can relate. But essentially, I'll talk about how to create it. So it's really simple. I'm actually just going to share my screen and just show you some live examples. So just start with going to business.google.com or Google My Business. And you can actually I'm already logged in, but you can actually just go add single location. If you have multiple locations, you can do that as well. You can type your business name in. Now I'm going to type in Studio Hawk to give you an example. Now we already have a location, so it's really important to search first. If you already have a location, you may not have created it before. Don't freak out, that's fine. It just means it could have been user generated. So someone could have, a Google local guide or someone on Google Maps could have actually already created this for you, giving you a little helping hand. You want to now claim that, because that won't be owned or hopefully not owned, but someone won't be managing that. So there's no one that can actually see the data on the back end, so don't worry about that. It's just there available so customers can find you and interact with you as a business. So you'll want to select that. Yet don't worry if the information isn't correct either, because you can later on, after you verify, you can update that. It'll then tell you, so obviously I've got access to this, but if you don't have access to it and someone's already claimed it, it'll give you a bit of it'll give you the two first letters. And something to keep in mind as well is it'll say @gmail.com if it is a Gmail account, or if it's not, if it hasn't got a domain that's your own domain, for example. But in this case, it's my own domain, so it's going to have ... So it's a good little, it's more of a memory jog. So if you know that email, then awesome. Like get access to it and add that user to the listing. If you don't, you can go request access, and then you can you basically just say whether you're management or ownership, fill all that information out, contact details. That'll send an email to the person who's the owner of the listing, and then they can either accept or not. So that's how to do it if someone's already got access to it. If you want to create it for the first time, there's generally what you can do is you can actually just go to Maps, or you can even just Google your own business. So I'm just trying to think if I can remember one that's not verified. I don't think I can off the top of my head, to be honest. I just Google Studio Hawk and I go, let's see if it pops up. Sometimes it does. Okay, it does in this case. So Google originally just used to show, you'll see here, own this business. So Google originally just used to show this for if the business listing wasn't actually verified or no one had actual access to look after it. But now they're showing this just to any listing, and that's just because there can be multiple owners to a business. Or say, for example, a business is sold and they have that user isn't passed on to the new business owner, they need to be able to get access. So they need to go through that same process. So they've made it a bit easier for people to be able to do that. So you want to click that and then follow that information if it's user generated. If there's nothing there at all, then there's two ways to do this. Now, I actually do a different way than what most people would do. And that's because I think that your business listing should be up as soon as possible. You shouldn't have to wait for a postcard that can take, at the moment with COVID going on, obviously the post is slow. We had a business owner literally just recently, they had to wait, I think it was almost 30 days, which is not ideal because they just opened up and they need to make money, right? Especially in this time of the year with all this kind of stuff happening with COVID. So what I actually do is, in this case, let's make a fake business. So if I go, I don't know, cakes everywhere, and see there's obviously no listing that exists, so I can go add this missing place. I'll add the name, cakes everywhere, right? And I can just fill out the information. This is just through Google Maps, by the way. Sorry if I jumped around a bit there. You want to add a category. So what I can do is Google actually show the different categories that you can select from. Now, if you're working with an SEO specialist or you have a little bit of SEO understanding, I do recommend a plugin called Keywords Everywhere or Surfer tool, Surfer SEO tool. So cake store. So you can actually do a quick bit of keyword research into understanding what ones have more search volume behind it. So you can see estimated search volume. Oh, that's in US. Sorry, guys. I do apologize. Oh, here we go. We've got Australian results here with keywords everywhere. So 1,300 searches per month. So cake store could be pretty good. All right. That's looking pretty good. So cake shop, I'll probably go with that. There are some other options there, but I think obviously that's pretty relevant. The common one I hear that people get confused on is probably the difference between a cafe or a coffee shop. Cafe is obviously a lot more popular, but you are diluting yourself to more competitors. Coffee shop is a little bit more specific, but also it actually gets a lot more searches as well. So obviously there's a lot of people that drink coffee. So just take that in consideration. You really want to be focused on, yes, you could be a cafe that does really good coffee, and yes, you could say you're a cafe, but if you're known for your coffee, go for coffee shop. Don't go for cafe. Don't go for the broader one until maybe you could look at that down the track. There's no harm in changing that category down the track. Just keep in mind that sometimes Google can trigger a re-verification where you might have to send another postcard. Bit of a pain, but it's worth it in the long run because you're not kind of opening yourself up to such a big, to so much competitors that you're never really going to get any traction or audience. You may as well start sort of niche and then grow up, kind of like with your long tail keywords and then getting to your more competitive keywords. So I'll add in my location. I'll update, make sure you update your location on your map. A lot of people forget to do that. You want to make sure that you're right in the middle of the building. So if I was 208 Chapel Street, I would want to make sure that my pin is right in the middle of the building. Now, if you don't own the whole building, or maybe you only occupy it or where the shop is, say if it was only half, then make sure it's in the middle of where the customers can actually get access. So keep that in mind. And then once you've updated that, then you can actually go claim this business and then go through that same verification process. Now, without actually triggering this, and I don't want to because it's not a real business, to do the verification, I'll discard this. To do the verification, there's a few different options. So generally what will happen is you'll come to a page where it'll say, choose your different ways of verifying your business listing. So what you'll want to do is ideally, if the postcard option should be the last option. So another thing that I keep in mind, and this is another little trick that I tend to do, and it doesn't always work, but I always make sure I have Google Search Console access first. If you can get Google Search Console access first, because that is a pretty good indicator that sometimes you can be eligible for instant verification if there's enough citations and data points. It can be instant, which is awesome because it saves you the pain of having to wait for a postcard and slowing down the process. If you can't do instant verification, it just won't give you that option. But a little trick that I do is I actually do, and I'll talk about this a bit further on in a bit more detail, but you can actually do citations and build your directories first. So outside of Google My Business. So it might be if you might be doing a Zomato page, Foursquare, all those kind of other different listings and filling out that information. And Google will actually use those as reference points, and make sure that your name, address, and phone number is always consistent. I can't stress that enough, because that's how Google actually matches the business as one and understands that you are that business. So if you don't have them consistent, it can cause confusion. But a little trick there, so it can kind of speed up that process. Now, sometimes you can do all that. You can do the citations. You can have Google Search Console access, and it doesn't give you the option to instantly verify. Don't worry too much. Go for the postcard. But now coming back to Google Maps, if I'm a local guide, right, I can actually create this listing I can create a listing without even worrying about doing it as a business owner. I can create it as a customer. So like you just saw before, that same process, that's me creating a business or suggesting to Google that there's a business that exists, and you want to create that listing. So that listing will have limited visibility, but it has visibility. That's the main thing, right? So what I would do is start adding some photos into it straight away, fill out your business information, all that suggest and edit stuff that you see. Make sure you fill that out. So what I'm talking about is, let's just say this bakery here, and I can go here, suggest and edit, right? So I can just go, so I can actually suggest to Google to change some of this information. So add services. This is what we can add photos. This is what you'll want to do to keep it up to date while you wait for the postcard to come in the mail. So then people can actually see your listing and actually interact with your business, and you can get customers through the door. Now, you'll want to do that as, ideally, if you are a local guide, it's a lot quicker. You get those updates happen pretty much. For my case, for example, I think I'm level 7 at the moment. If you contribute as a local guide, you can actually build a lot of trust with Google, and when you start doing those suggestion edits, they're pretty much instant. So if you know a local guide, awesome, get them to do it. If you don't worry too much. It will still update. It just might take about 3 days for Google to go through and verify that the information's correct and you're not trying to manipulate a competitor or something like that. So it's a great little trick to keep in mind, is to get that up straight away. And then when your postcard comes, obviously pop that code in and then get straight into it. So you will actually get access to be able to update most of your information before your postcard comes. You just don't get access to the insights. So how many people walk through your door? How many people see your listing? How many people request directions, phone calls, review your photos, all that kind of stuff. But at least you can get going, and people can start noticing your business, and you can start getting that visibility. Yes, it's very limited, but it's better than nothing. So that's the verification process for Google My Business specifically. I don't know, I can't see Nick, but have we got any questions or anything around that, or are we pretty good to keep moving on?
Oh, we have quite a few questions.
Do we? Okay, do you want to hit me with a couple?
And I've got a couple of spicy ones of my own as well.
Do you?
So I'll just go through. Yeah, you know it, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Always have questions. So the first one, we've got a really great question, which was I've always thought to align business categories with what your competitors are doing. Like, how do you go through and assess which one is right for you?
Good question. I don't worry too much about what my competitors are doing, because if you follow your competitors, they might be targeting the wrong audience. You want to target the right audience based on what I said, like before. You want to focus on your strengths. If you're known for your coffee, or you want to be known for your coffee because you know your coffee is really good, but you could be seen as more of a cafe because you provide lunches and that kind of stuff. If your coffee is your strength, be called a coffee shop, because if people are Googling coffee, they want good coffee, right? If people are Googling cafe, they want a good cafe. But if that's not so much your strength, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, if that makes sense. When I'm looking at competitors, I want to get an indicator of what my competitors are doing and what categories they're listing themselves as. And that'll give me an idea of, it might spark some ideas and, okay, I need to do some research around whether that's relevant to me. But ultimately, the category that you choose should be the category that's your strength. Too many times I've seen people put the wrong category in and it's not their strength, and then you're risking the return business, which for brick and mortar businesses in the sense of a cafe or anyone in hospitality, that is like returning business is what grows hospitality businesses. So if it doesn't align with what your strengths are, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot with those returning customers.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, I love that.
Easy to overlook because people are just worried about the new people. They're not worried about the returners.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this actually this next one is mine.
Okay, hit me with one.
Yeah. So so this is like an old client of mine was working on 40 Winks' site, and they had 98 subdomains and corresponding to 98 different stores. Now we had to go through and when I say we, it was pretty much my job to go through and get either postcards or to call up them to basically verify like their listings. Now, of course, 98 stores across Australia, there's bound to be a couple of people that just don't know who you are, or like expecting you to call, and it might sound a little bit spammy. So it wasn't the nicest experience. Is there like a way to 80-20 that at all?
To do multiple locations, so like bulk updates.
That many locations, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually look. I've had a bit of experience with testing bulk locations update because look, I'm a big fan of 80-20. Like if I can do 80% of the work in 20% of the time, I'm always going to go for it, right? Yeah. But if it doesn't yield me,
the client at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like if they're paying me to do something I can do in an hour rather than 10, then hey, I'm going to save them that money that they're paying me per hour to be able to do it, then rather than charge them for 10. But one of the things that I've actually discovered over the years is that bulk, when you do bulk updates, so you can export a template from Google My Business and you can update the information in bulk. So if you have like, say for example, The Good Guys, right? They've got multiple locations around Australia. If we want to update that, we can do a bulk upload. The problem with that is though, and this is really important to remember, is that I've found if you do bulk uploads, even if you're the business owner, customers can actually change that a lot easier than if you physically do an individual listing. So if you've just bulk uploaded and a customer comes in and then suggests an edit, Google will actually approve that a lot easier than if you've actually individually done it individually, which is crazy. And it's really frustrating because if you've got a big business with a lot of listings like that, it's just like, it's so frustrating. But what Google's trying to do, and I guess on the big, this is still my theory, it's not proven, but what I think Google's trying to do is get the managers or people that really run that location to individually look after it. They're kind of incentivizing that. So then it's much more relevant. The information is much more relevant coming from that person rather than so much of a head office or someone who really understands those locations. So the information's going to be 100% accurate rather than, I've seen it heaps of times with bulk import information is like, the open times. And, if it's a franchise business, the open times might not actually be the same, but they've just blanket updated those open hours. And now people are rocking up and they're actually closed. And that sucks, right? Like you don't want that. And people get really pissed off and they'll write bad reviews, and no one likes bad reviews.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of individually updating if possible. But yeah, if you want to save time and you are willing to watch Google My Business on the back end either on your app or on the desktop, and you're going to watch that, generally takes 3 days from someone suggesting it for it to be published if you don't review and accept or update. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you're going to do the bulk route.
Yeah, that's really good to know that old me didn't suffer needlessly. But that was really, really awesome because again, like with all of those GMB profiles, we were able to add like a lot of really great information, and because a lot of those places, a lot of those businesses would also like sponsor like local sports teams or do a lot of community outreach. So the ones that really were complying definitely saw much better results, and again, like much better reviews associated with those GMBs as well. That's actually a really good segue to our next question. Is it better to look at creating citations for trouble business locations who aren't complying? You mentioned like
Wait,
before.
Yeah.
You mentioned,
I like it.
Yeah, you mentioned, yeah, right. You mentioned before that. The sauciest of questions. So you said before, like having citations for businesses, like we'll sometimes like do like instant auto verification. So like is that a good way to do that, and how?
Yeah, I think Google's pretty good with their auto verification. Like, I'm pretty impressed. I thought when they first rolled it out, I thought, oh, this is going to be pretty easy to get around, like it's going to be some people really taking advantage of it. But honestly, I was pretty impressed. I have got a little story on this, actually, if you want to hear it. It's
Let's do it.
It's pretty funny. I had this guy reach out to me, and just complete left field, right? And I was like, he basically just said to me, look, I can instantly verify any listing you want anywhere in the world. And I was like, okay, like obviously a red flag went off, but I'm like, I'm going to entertain this because this is funny. Like, I want to see what he's got. So I said, yeah, look, let's organize a call.
Bet coming up.
What's that?
Sounds like you should have had a bet with someone on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Should have thrown some money down, Pete. But yeah, so I had a chat with him. I'm like, what do you got? Like, give it to me. What have you got? And he basically, this was when it kind of first started rolling out the instant verification. He basically found out the certain data points that Google needs to see to be able to give you that instant verification. So he was essentially creating those citations that Google wanted to see, and then creating the listing and getting it instantly verified. And he was doing it on mass scale. And he showed me this one business example that he'd done for that they didn't exist in these locations, but they'd successfully verified 275 locations around the world.
Whoa.
And put reviews on every single one, and respond to the reviews. These listings, I was impressed the amount of effort these guys had gone to, the amount of listings. They obviously had a team. But all of it was fake, right? Like, all of it was just it was fake. I'm like, look, I'm impressed, but it's only a matter of time until the big G comes down with a hammer and removes all of them. Like, it's high risk. But, the client that was referring to was making a lot of money out of it. And I believe him, right? But I did a bit of research about this guy's name, right? Anyway, it turns out that he was actually going to court really soon for credit card fraud, and it was actually at federal level. So he was in a lot of trouble, and there was actually a full document talking about how he'd gone to jail at 18 years old for credit card fraud, and that he'd gone in there for 9 months, and he'd only been out for about a year. Now he's doing this. So I was like, oh my goodness. Anyway, so a few months later, out of interest, like, I obviously didn't want to have anything to do with this guy because everything we do is white hat. It's long term. I don't really. It's fun. It's interesting knowing that stuff, but it's just, it's not worth taking the risk. So I just kind of said, yeah, cool, no worries. Like, sounds interesting. We'll reach out if you have any interest. But obviously we didn't. I was just being polite. But then a couple of months later, I Googled that same business, and I couldn't find a single listing. All of them had been removed except for one, which was their actual location, which I was really interested to see. And Google had successfully removed all the reviews except for the genuine reviews. And lo and behold, a lot of them were pretty bad. But I thought that was really interesting that he'd actually found a loophole and leveraged that. But obviously, taking huge advantage of it. but yeah, that is.
Would you call that a black hat?
What's that? What was that, Pete?
Would you call that black hat for local SEO?
Yeah, well, I guess it's not like they don't actually have those locations. So yeah, I would, I guess it's definitely trying to take advantage of Google. So I would consider anything that's not genuine information for a customer on Google's platform to be, you know, black hat. But I mean, technically they were kind of playing by the rule book.
I'm really curious.
You know. What was that, Nick?
I mean, I'm really curious the timeline. Like when did you actually like check that out?
It was about 2.5 months later. So, but
2.5 months later. So
after I'd seen them. So I don't know when they created them. But yeah, it wouldn't have been that long because it was still relatively new, the instant verification.
Yeah.
If you'd done them all instantly verified. But yeah, I knew it wasn't going to last long because when they had a lot of fake reviews, and you know, the more that you have, the higher the chance you're going to get removed. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of a laugh. But yeah, it's don't do it unless you're legit. Like, it's just not worth it. The amount of time it takes to do that, you may as well invest that on being legit, and you'll make more money in the long run anyway. You'll do better out of it. So, you know, I'm always in the long-term game, not the short-term game. But yeah,
that's
that
definitely
was
save it nice.
Yeah, never worth it. Never worth it.
Yeah, it's a good reminder for everyone out there. You know, like, what was it? November of last year was like that massive local Google algorithm update, which, like, a lot of people were saying, like, was probably the biggest one to hit since like 2016, where it really required businesses and agencies to be a lot more vigilant, particularly about fighting spam in affected areas. That's why I was like thinking, like, oh, that's really interesting, because I'm wondering about the timeline of like checking it 2 months later, whether or not that sort of coincided with the update. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gee, we've got a lot of questions, haven't we? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
No, you're right. Go for it. I'll try and keep them short and sweet so we get through as many as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, this one's from Peter Machinkovic. I really hope I said that right. A lot of respect to you, dude. I've been practicing. So his question was, how do you deal with fake listings from competitors? What's the snitching protocol, which I think really blends in nicely with what we were talking about before.
I love this one. Thanks, Peter, for asking this. I have a lot of fun with this. I know you'd be laughing too after I said that. But yeah, look, I have come across not so much competitors, but yeah, I have come across where there's been fake listings created for whatever reason. It's hard to really tell why, but the best way, and I mean, there's a few ways you can do it, but the best way I've found is it really depends on the business. And if it is duplicate, for example, then I would permanently close one. And then to be totally honest with you, I would call the Google My Business support team and I would harass them every day until they removed it. And I think that number ended up, I can't call that number anymore. And fair enough, I think I abused it a lot. But yeah, I ended up finding another one actually. But yeah, honestly, the hard part about duplicate listings, when one's not, and you have one permanently closed, is it can confuse people and they think, oh, they're not open anymore. But actually, oh no, it's not that one. It's another one. But that was back in the day before Google's really good with duplicates now, where it actually picks it up and you can sort that out. So that's what I used to do then. But another one is you can report it. You probably have to do that. I find 7 is the magic trick. 7 people reporting it. If they're local guides, it'll happen really quickly. If they're not local guides, it'll happen. I find the average is around about 14 days. Just, you know, it's few and far between. It's really just depends on, I guess, the more you do it, the more it's going to flag. And then I feel like there's a trigger in the system that after it hits 7, it triggers something and then it actually starts to action it. Because when I've actually followed up and done calls to the Google business support team, they've gone, oh yeah, we can see it here after it's been flagged 7 times. Whereas before it's like, oh, okay. And they don't really say anything, like they don't notice it. So I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, I don't know if everyone has a support number. I think they've completely shut the support down. I'm probably a part to play in, in shutting that down. I abused it so much just because.
What's the number?
What's the number? Yeah.
I don't know. That might be a bit too cheeky, but it's there for a short amount of time, not a good amount of time.
Honestly, I don't have a line that works. But if anyone finds it, please send it to me. Like I'll buy you beer or wine to say thank you. But I'm constantly on the search for them because it does. You can get stuff happening really quickly when you've got that direct comms. But I hope that answers your question. Peter, I know that's a bit difficult when you have permanently marked as permanently closed. It can get a bit tricky because people get confused. But I find that another trick is actually up before you mark it. I actually update the title and put in brackets now and then whatever the business is, the listing. That's what traditionally what I've done, and I find that's actually quite effective. I did that a lot back in the day. I tend to not do it as much anymore because Google's getting better with this stuff. But that's another kind of solution. But I'd probably go the reporting route first. If you don't have success, then go for the permanently closed.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, we've got one final question just to close it off. Actually, a really good question from Gayan Pereira, who I think is dealing with basically a lot of these issues at the moment. He was saying that his phone number on Google My Business is wrong and he can't change it. And every time he tries to change it, it reverts back to the old one. And is there any way to fix it? I think he's already gone through the protocol and a couple of times, and they say like, wait 48 hours. And he's kind of at the point where he's scratching his head.
Well, let's go through all the things, the checklist. So the checklist is make sure your NAP is consistent. That's the first thing you want to do. Is your number consistent? If your number's not consistent on all, then that's going to be something you want to do. And I'm talking about your number on your contact page, the NAP needs to be on your contact page. So your business name, the address, and your phone number. I know a lot of people just have phone number and address. No, have your business name as well because Google will be able to pick that up. The next thing on the checklist is make sure that you've actually got, what's the other one that is really, really important? The number that you've actually got is like a local landline. If it's not a local landline, it's a 1-800 number or 1-300 number. It's a lot harder. Google does prefer local landlines. Obviously, the keyword in that is local over your kind of generic ones. So it might be that you might be finding, I have seen that before, where the 1-800s or 1-300s or whatever reverts back to the local landline that it can actually see on other other citations or other directories. That's the third thing on your checklist. What have you got listed as your NAP on other citations and directories? Make sure that NAP is consistent, that number is consistent, because if Google is seeing that you're trying to change it and that's not showing consistency along on the other directories, then it will revert it back. Also, keep an eye out on your customers. If people suggesting an edit, there may be people actually suggesting an edit. There could be a good reason for that. There might not be. There might be someone's just trying to annoy you. And if that's the case, then just keep updating it to the original one. If you see that people are trying to update it, it says, review updates, and then you're reviewing it and you're seeing that your numbers changed, just keep doing it. What will happen is Google whoever's doing that will lose trust with Google, and then Google will just eventually ignore them unless they're creating new accounts. But I think they'll eventually burn out. It's not worth it. I don't know what gain they'd be getting out of that unless they're a competitor who's absolute adamant on confusing people. But they're those main things I would look at. That they're really important. But the biggest is NAP consistency across all your directories and your website. If it's not consistent, that'll be really the main reason why you're struggling with it, I think.
That is awesome. That is a pretty thorough checklist. So just rewatch this, just go through what you've got and see if there's any holes in the armor. Chinks in the armor, that's the term. Yeah.
Awesome.
There
All
is
right. Well, so we'll kick.
yeah. There's a
Oh, there's a couple more. Is there? I think I've
well.
opened the can
Yeah.
of worms.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you whether or not like how you're feeling. We are running a little bit behind time, and I'd really like to get
That's all
Peter
right.
on. So
Yeah. Have
yeah.
you got more
Yeah.
slides? You got more slides, haven't you?
I do. But I can.
Yeah.
How long have we got, Nick? How are we going?
Yeah. Actually, I might just say to everyone, like, look, guys, if you could just reach out to Jake with your questions. I know that there's at least two, one by Paula, hey Paula, and one by Tiago. So if you could reach out to Jake, his links are in the description below. Obviously, Jake is an absolute machine with local SEO. Like I said, he's one of the people that I look to always for these kinds of questions, because he's the guy who will test things and make sure that these are done correctly. And I'm not just saying that because I have the pleasure of working with him. I've had that opinion before I came to Studio Hawk. So please go and reach out to him and ask him your questions. Yep, sounds like you do, Gayan, but all the best, bud, and I really hope that I really hope it works out for you. So let's move on. Of course, we've got Peter Mead, who is the godfather of SEO, who is going to walk us through WordPress SEO, and I'm just absolutely stoked because, again, Peter is someone that I have went on for as long as we've been friends with all my tough, tricky questions. So, guys, if you've got some really interesting WordPress questions, warm up those fingers, and we'll let you take that away, Peter.
Oh, thanks, Nick, for saying those kind words, and for really blowing up my head a fair bit there. But presentation, and I'd love to. I still would really love to see the rest of your slides at some stage. Definitely, because it's getting right into that. But of course, lots and lots of questions can sometimes get slow things down. But I'll tell you what. How about I will share my screen and.
Take it away, Peter.
Okay, let me see.
Just while Peter's getting that organized, I'm just going to give everyone a little bit of a reminder. We are watching this here live on YouTube, so I feel like a little bit of one of those influencers. But if you're really enjoying the conversation so far, we'd love you to subscribe. Get updates whenever we're going to be posting new videos, any updates or anything like that. So hit that notification bell as well. As soon as we're going to be going live, that would be really, really awesome. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for subscribing. And without further ado, I introduce to everyone Mr. Peter Mead.
Okay, and you can see my slides. Okay. WordPress SEO is quite a huge topic, and of course, in a small window of time that we have available today, I don't really have time to go into all the. But what I've decided to do is focus on WordPress SEO, generating traffic the data-driven way, right? So for people who want to do their own, SEO, to be able to set everything up and measure it and do the whole thing. So I think is my mic a bit soft? I don't know what's going on.
Sorry. I think when you came when we started, it was a little bit too loud, and now I think it's a little bit too soft. We need that Goldilocks moment.
Is it any better now? Is it any better?
People in the comments, if you could write back. Maybe keep talking, Peter, just for a little bit, if that's okay.
Just check that it's okay. Can you hear me okay? Is it still a bit soft?
Yeah, maybe just a touch more.
Okay, let me just turn it up a little bit more and see what happens. Okay.
And also, maybe the audience should pop their volume up a bit as well if they can.
Yeah.
That might help.
So I don't know what happened, because before I think the mic was too loud, but now it seems too soft. But anyway,
No, I think it's good now, Pete. I think it's good.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. Right.
I think you fixed it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just go into this and we'll see what happens. So WordPress is massive. Why would we want to do WordPress SEO? And so what I'm saying here is that why is WordPress SEO best SEO? It's a bit of a joke. Just got to have a bit of fun with this stuff. But we do know that that WordPress powers a huge amount of the internet. These numbers came from WP Engine. They're saying that from the top 500 websites on the internet, over 33% of them are using WordPress. I mean, other than that, it's open source. So why is open source good? Open source means that we can get into all the code, and the more, because SEO is a long-term game, we working, optimizing our site over time. We don't want to come up against any hurdles. Some other platforms, we reach those limitations of what we can actually do. And basically what ends up happening is we run up against that limitations. With WordPress, it's open source. We can get into any bit of the code we want. We can optimize everything. So you can host it on your own hosting provider of your own choice, and you can use themes, you can use plugins. And what would you do? What would the first thing do once you've installed WordPress? What would the first thing you would do? Okay, get your Yoast installed. Just don't even argue about it. Just go in there, install Yoast, do all the basic configurations, and it saves time. You set up all your titles, your sitemap, and then you can just sort of move on with your life. What we want to avoid is so many times with lots of other platforms, we're just struggling to get basic stuff done, like updating the titles, or just going in there and fixing up URLs. With a small business website, we have the ability to go and do that. There's a link down there to a tutorial for doing that. And then once we've got WordPress installed, we've got Yoast installed, we've done all those basic configurations, now we can start getting into the data-driven side of things. And the reason why I'm saying this is so important, because, especially now, online is so important. We want to know, where did the traffic come from? Where are the stats? Where's the data? This is really what SEO is all about. But what I'm saying here is we're going to go a bit step further and actually start looking into much more from the data-driven side of it. So what we're looking for is a bunch of free tools. Google makes them available to us, which is Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google Tag Manager, and Google Data Studio for doing the reporting. So I just put a little proviso there as well, because Google does change this stuff quite often. And so often when you're looking for how to do things with these tools, you might find that Google's updated it in the meantime. So it's just the good thing about that is, though, that often you can sort of follow your nose and figure these things out. But so anyway, let's start with Google Analytics. So I guess I guess anybody who's looked into doing SEO has heard of Google Analytics. And if you're completely new to it, there's a link down there where you can click on that and just start getting it set up. Everybody should have Google Analytics installed on their website. And I'm sure many of us who have done SEO for a while will still be surprised at the amount of sites that just don't actually have Google Analytics set up. But it's not too late. There's a few things about it though, and that is once you place that, what you need to remember is that Google Analytics is not retroactive, and so it's not retroactive. You can't change the data once it's been tracked, and so it needs to be set up right from the start, because often maybe we work on a client's website or we look at our own website and we've been collecting the wrong data, rubbish data, and it's just completely useless because we don't have maybe even 6 to 12 months or longer, and we just don't actually have any good data there to be able to do any proper work with. So it's very important to get your Google Analytics set up right from the start. So we want to measure the data, we want to analyze the reports, and then we want to use insights for optimization decisions. This is pretty much the data-driven SEO process. So it works really well. We've got the data, we can track the data, we check the reports, we can then figure out what to do to get to the next stage of our optimizing. So there are some common issues though, and that is the conversion tracking is not working properly. A number of other things like 0% bounce rate. What about, like as I mentioned before, the rubbish data. I mean, it's useless for us to be able to use that data for us to be able to figure out what to optimize next. So that's something that it really should be considered to make sure you've got your Google Analytics set up properly. So how does it actually work? Look, I've just got a little picture there. Everyone who's done this before will recognize that script. But in general, we place the script on the site. The script executes when visitors hit the page, and then the data is sent to the Google Analytics view. So there's a processing engine and collects it and sends it to the view, and then it processes all the rules based on your Google Analytics configuration. That's another reason why the configuration is so important to get it right. As we said, it can't be changed after it's been processed. So if you want to get it right, here's a little basic setup checklist, and which some of this stuff might seem basic, straightforward, but it is certainly worth going through this stuff because it's very common the basics get missed. Things like we want to put the code in the head of the page using GTM, Google Tag Manager, which I'll get to further down the slides. It's a preferred way of doing it, which I think is not too to get to. I mean, especially people who have been involved in this sort of thing before. It's worth taking the plunge into Google Tag Manager. But the next one is use the Google Tag Assistant to check and make sure it's all set up. And then make sure you got your views sorted out because that's another common thing which can go wrong a lot is just too many views or the wrong kind of views or the filters aren't working, all this sort of thing. It just becomes confusing. You log into a Google Analytics account and there's just views all over the place. You don't know which one you should be looking at. And so that's worth looking at as well. So also you want to filter out your own traffic, which is a pretty common thing. Make sure they've got goals set up. Lots of people don't set up goals, but it's very important for goals to be set up because that's how you're going to measure the success of your SEO. And also get to it and install the internal search. That's another thing which is beyond this little tutorial here tonight, but certainly internal search is a really great thing because we can figure out what people are searching for on our site while they're on our site. But other than that, do some things. Set up your UTMs, your tagging for your non-referral traffic, and make sure your AdWords is linked. there's a bunch of other things we can do here too for customizations, which is things like event tracking for specific events in the pages where we can set them as data points. E-commerce tracking, which I will explain further down, and then obviously go through, figure out, understand the reports, and then get used to which dashboards and insights you're going to be working from. So let's have a look. Some specifics. Accounts. So, for your individual login, you'll only be able to create 100 accounts per login. And you'll be able to have 50 properties per account, but each tracking code is unique per the property. So also for each property, you can have 25 views, and the data is specific. It's actually specific to the view, and so this is something people don't understand either. That view is collecting data, not at the account level or the property level, but at the view level. And so as it gets collected, this is the sort of thing. If people start going off creating more views, it can become confusing. Which view should be used as the actual measurement, and and also 20 goals. So don't go crazy creating too many goals, because I think a lot of people are confused about goals, but they can't be deleted. You only create 20 of them. So let's go into how do we install it. So installing the Google Analytics tracking code. So we can do it manually by copying and pasting it into the head of the page, or we can use a plugin to place the code. So we can use insert headers and footers plugin. That's pretty common. Or we can use GTM, Google Tag Manager, to install it, which is the recommended option that I like using. And then once we've done that, we can check it out, the status on the tracking code page. So here we can see this section here on the tracking code page in Google Analytics, and it shows that traffic is being sent. So let's have a look. Google. So now we've installed it all. It's all running. Now we're tracking, right? So what should I be tracking? And well, everybody wants to track everything, because at some point, everybody thinks that every little bit of data is going to be important to them. The problem is, it's not going to be. Like, the more data you got doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be insightful or helpful to you to make any decisions about what to do, what SEO changes to make on your site, or anything like that. So besides that, it can be expensive, but we know that there's Google BigQuery now. There's a link there to that if you want to check it out. People can use that sort of thing, but again, it's big, it's time consuming. That is the kind of thing you want to do if you've probably got like a data driven, like a data analyst full-time in your company who wants to sit down and run this kind of a project. But for a small business website, or even a medium-sized business website, you'll be better off just getting into specifics, figuring out a strategy of what do you want to track, what are your business objectives, and set the data up to track that kind of a thing. So here you can see there's a screenshot here of someone that's a real client site, and you can see things like button clicked or served by operator. These are events. These are the kind of data that they're tracking. And so let's go to the goals. So again, same kind of thing with goals, where people figure out how to create goals. And I would recommend it. Once you've discovered how to set up a goal for your site, don't go in there and start creating goals for everything. Really, goals need to be specific, measurable, and they need to be closely coupled with a real outcome for your business. And so, things like setting up a goal, as you can see there's things like live buttons, live chat buttons are clicked, all these different things like that. Sometimes they're too much. I mean, what you're really looking at is things like, yes, did they sign up to the newsletter? Okay, count that as a goal completion. If that makes a difference to your bottom line, But some of the really obvious ones are things like the contact form, thank you page, if it's important for you to receive, leads on your website. The thank you page, that becomes a goal completion. What about the orders being placed after checkout? So that becomes a goal completion. Or the booking completion URL, if they're booking an appointment. So they're the kind of things that are really good for goals to be measured. And so you don't need stacks and stacks of goals. You don't need to use all 20 goals if you're a small business. I mean, if you do have a very complicated website with lots, if you're also into e-commerce, then you're better off doing e-commerce tracking than spending time trying to configure goals for every product. So we've done our Google Analytics, we've set that up. Now we're getting into Google Search Console, which, by the way, is I've just seen a question here from Chris. Oh, that's a comment.
It's all good. I've been collecting all the questions.
Yeah. I've just seen a couple of questions there, but settings. Oh, that must have been, I'm not sure about that one, but there's also another one here from Peter who's saying, what do you think about headless WordPress? That's pretty nerdy stuff, Peter.
You can only expect the best.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got the time and the inclination, yes, headless WordPress is a thing to get into. But for people who are wanting to just sort of do their own SEO and be able to get their business online, definitely try to business of your SEO side of things under control, and that's what I'm trying to achieve by this presentation. So going forward here with Google Search Console, Google Search Console is an essential tool for if you want to do your own SEO, or if you're doing it for any clients. It is very often overlooked, surprisingly. Actually, people are saying that they're doing SEO, but they're not using Google Search Console. And I see this quite a lot. Definitely, it is really it is a really important tool to be using. The difference here is that with Google Search Console, it is showing what's your site's presence in Google search results. And so, I mean, it's quite simple to get started again with a lot of the Google tools, quite easy to get started. It sort of talks you through it and explains it all to you how to do it. But you can add a property, get it verified, and of course there's a link there so that you can get started. I'm not going to go into all the nitty-gritties, but I think once you've got it going, there's some important things to be checking often. Check your messages that are coming in from Google. Google's sending these messages. I can see one there. There's a new coverage issue detected for the website. And of course, coverage issue is important because it means our URLs are not getting indexed or maybe not getting crawled or something along those lines. So it's worth diving into that, figuring out what's going on. Checking your sitemaps, making sure there's no errors. These are kind of basic things that I guess, in our busy lives of running our business, we forget this stuff or we don't see it. And the amount of times that people have asked me, well, something's wrong, I can't figure out what's wrong. And it's just something along the lines of, well, the sitemap has the wrong URLs in it or something like that. Another one which is really important to get a handle on here is it's one of the first things I do when I check anybody's Google Search Console account. Go and check they haven't got a manual action, right? And of course, this is the big, the atomic bomb of the SEO world, I guess, is that if you've been hit with a manual action, this pretty much means don't do anything else. Work until you until you have got your manual action fixed, reviewed, submitted for review, and then But that's exactly how to do all that stuff is for another presentation. But this is certainly, this is certainly the thing to make sure that there's nothing in there. It does happen, but if you're on top of it, you can sort this out quickly. But then we want to check our performance on a regular basis. A lot of people come in here and look at these graphs because they're pretty, and we want them to go up, up, up all the time. And but as you can see here, is that it's showing things like the impressions and the clicks and the CTR and the average position. What it's actually in Google search engine, what it's doing is it's actually showing that it's not tracked data, it's not hits to your site, it's clicks on the search results, it's impressions in the search engine. So it's just something, it's just a key difference to keep in mind, because I think it's easy to forget the difference between how that works. But use the filters. Click on the filters, filter by a certain query. Figure these, spend the time in here, because this is really making a difference. One little thing to, I guess, a little takeaway for people is, we often see people doing keyword research and coming up with these keywords that have high search volume, etc. The misnomer is that because you found a keyword that's got high search volume, that for some reason that's actually going to send you traffic to your site. What we know, if you these keywords, sometimes those big search volume keywords just aren't in here. Even if we're so-called ranking for them, the ranking tools are showing us that we're ranking for those keywords, but they're just not coming up in here because it might not really be a keyword people actually type in to search for your business. And so that's where it's important here to look at this stuff, get into the queries and really dive into all this stuff. So index coverage is the next section, the next area where I think is really, really important. Here is, the health of your URLs. And this is very common for lots and lots. Here we can see a big website here that has got lots and lots of URLs that have crawl issues. This is just, it's probably a horror example really, but there's a few things to note here. You can see there that it's smartphone crawler. These are the kinds of things that are interesting, because just to keep in mind, read these things, look at these things to figure it out, because what it's showing is your website is getting crawled by the Google Plus smartphone. It gives you perspective. But really, we want to drill into all these errors and just figure out what's going on. Here we can see 160,000 pages have been excluded from Google indexing. So we want to figure out why. Does it matter? Maybe some pages are meant to be excluded. We maybe have set them for no indexing, but there's a lot of things we can do. We can test those URLs. We can test them live URL. We can view the rendered page, and we can request indexing. All kinds of things we can do in here. So I've got what's the right protocol with updating WordPress? Can you elaborate that one, please? I'm just saying.
Sorry, I was just kind of just heard the pause. Are you asking someone specifically?
No, just there was a question here, and it says, "What's the right protocol with updating WordPress?"
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask all those at the end.
Okay.
Sorry, Peter.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I do mean the process for updating. Is that what you're referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, like at the moment, like we're at what, WordPress 5.42 or something like 4.1, 4.2. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But a lot of clients have WordPress that's older than 3.3, which I think there's a lot of different changes that you kind of need to start to consider. I know like permalinks is definitely one. Anything that's older than 3.3 is just like, Okay, great. We might need to have a little bit more of a considered process with this. If you're looking at doing that. So yeah, if you can like maybe speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it should be straightforward because keeping WordPress updated is actually a pretty simple thing to do with the click of a button. But and also depending on what web hosting you've got, they will do it for you and update your WordPress versions for you. But what can, like as you said, business websites who are not in the business of actually updating their own WordPress websites themselves, and who maybe get a website built years ago and then leave it all alone and forget about everything. There's it's not an easy process, and several things might break. Old versions of WooCommerce break all the time. You just got to go through the process of doing things like disabling plugins. Obviously, first of all, we always want to start with a backup of the site, and then disable plugins, seeing which ones are preventing it from updating. Things like themes, that you could have old code, you could have jQuery code that's deprecated, all kinds of things. I mean, I guess it's not there's not really an easy answer to that one, but the no-brainer answer is actually just keep it updated as you go, right? And update your theme, update your plugins, update WordPress core as you go. But if things get way out of date, you're going to have to get a developer to help you, or spend the time to really go through those plugins, delete things that are not compatible with the latest version, themes that don't have the code that doesn't work, all that sort of stuff. So maybe I'll just keep going with the Prezzo for now.
Yeah, please.
So here we are. We're talking about using the data-driven way to drive traffic to your WordPress site. Well, what we're looking at here is measuring it, figuring out how to, what steps can we take, what things can we optimize. And so this is just really getting started. We want to install GTM on a WordPress site, because once we've installed Google Tag Manager, then we can start getting into some more nuanced kind of tracking. Consider installing the Google Tag Manager into the head and the body. In the footer, I've seen it work quite well in the footer. There's, of course, Google will tell you to install the GTM in the head of your site, and that may be the case if you've got complicated plugins and other scripts and things that are firing off before Tag Manager does. But it's worth trying to put it in the footer, and because it makes your site a little bit faster, right? We want speed. But anyway, there is a link there to Google Tag Manager. But again, it's a matter of getting started. Sign up for a Tag Manager account, and just follow your nose. But there's lots of tutorials around. Here we'll talk about it a little bit in terms of why not use a plugin for installing GTM on the WordPress site. And so this is a great plugin for doing that. It's probably one of the most common ones. Duracell Tommy's Google Tag Manager for WordPress. And you can just install the plugin, put the Tag Manager ID in there, and you can see I have it highlighted to select it, to put it in Google. But it usually kind of works in all cases that I've tried, or most cases. As I said, the proviso is if you've got some screwy kind of plugins or something, or an old site that hasn't been updated, things like that, where really in that case you've got other trouble. So, and then the next thing, once we want to use Tag Manager to install our Google Analytics. Once you've got Google Tag Manager working, then you can start doing all kinds of things inside a Google Tag Manager without having to touch your WordPress site or dig into the code, all kinds of things. And here we can set up Google Analytics to run from our Google Tag Manager. And so, basically what we do is just click on here, choose a tag, make sure it's the Google Analytics, the Universal Analytics, and then inside of here, we basically set up a new variable, enter in the tracking ID, choose a trigger and make sure the trigger is for all pages. And once we've done that, we're good to go. We can then preview it and deploy it. So we can preview in Google Tag Manager. And once that we can preview, we can see, is the traffic hitting the site? Is the tag fired on the page? If that is, then we can, we now have Google Tag Manager installed, Google Analytics installed, and we're now tracking. So if you're selling items, the next thing you're going to want to do, you've got a WooCommerce site, you are going to want to be able to track your e-commerce inside of Google Analytics instead of having to set up all those goals and that kind of a thing. We can actually set it up to what we can see is all of our sales data being tracked inside of Google Analytics, including things like how much the item was for sale, how many items, what are our popular items, all kinds of things can be tracked in there. So it's worth going the next step and doing this. It can be tricky to do this, but if you're using that plugin, and if we're just, the most complicated thing really is setting up the tag itself. But what I would say is you've got a WooCommerce site, set up a product, just a test product, a $1 product with, use your credit card on there to test this thing, because you're going to want to test it that it's all working and you're checking all scenarios that it's working. So basically we go back into our plugin, Duracell Tommy's plugin, and this time we're going across to the integration tab, WooCommerce, and we're going to track enhanced e-commerce and create a trigger. Now this is a copy and paste bit of code here, because we go and create a trigger, make sure that it's a custom event trigger inside of Google Tag Manager. And then we're going to use this regex, because this regex, this regular expression for the event name, what it does is a catch-all scenario, and it captures all of the things like add product to cart, remove product from cart, check out, all the events we need can be all placed into one trigger if we use a regex to do it. So that's, and we tick the box there that says use regex. I want to create the tag. So go back into Google Tag Manager. You should already be in there. Create a new tag. Make sure it's Universal Analytics. Make sure it's not a transaction. It needs to be an event. The category is enhanced e-commerce, or you can call it whatever you want as long as you're consistent, but it really should be, I think enhanced e-commerce makes a lot of sense. The action is we're just choosing it as an event. You can see on the picture on the side of showing all this stuff here. The event label can be the page path. So if every time that gets tracked into Google, we can see what page were they on when they did that. Leaves the value empty. And now we want to make sure it's a non-interaction hit. Otherwise, every single time someone adds an item to their shopping cart, it's going to count it as a hit to the site, which you don't want. And we can then select our Google Analytics variable, which we had set up previously. And then select the enable override settings, expand down. We want to choose e-commerce. We want to enable enhanced e-commerce features set to true, and then we want to select use the data layer. So all that's in the screenshot, but if you're doing this yourself, if you use this slide, you can see all those instructions step by step, one down to the other, and you should be able to create the tag effectively. And then, as we know, you can use the preview to make sure that it's hitting the traffic's it's working. You can see the events, and then you have got your e-commerce tracking set up. And then we want to be able to check. We want to be able to see the data, because basically once we've got all our tracking, everything done, we need some meaningful reports that's going to help us without being too overwhelmed with all of the Google Analytics stuff. So spend the time, figure out how to use Google Data Studio dashboard, right? I mean, it's all straightforward to get started. You just go to datastudio.google.com. You've already got a Google Analytics account. You've got a Google Search Console account. All those things can be brought in to make your reports. And so there's a bunch of sample reports you can get started with to try it out. Just get in there, start a report, and add a data connector. This will give you, data source, and then you can start building a report. Just start dragging your objects on there. It's all drag and drop, WYSIWYG, all that sort of thing. All the things that we want in a modern internet. And so simply, I would say, jump in there, start playing around with that. Here's a report that I customized, really content marketing. And as you can see, we can do all kinds of things about the goal, the values of the goals, the data we're collecting, and really specific stuff. I mean, that's an old screenshot now, but it's certainly those sort of reports. That report is still active within the company, even 3 years later. It's still collecting data. It's still really useful to the company. And so this is the kind of thing that it's worth spending the time, if you're going to do your own SEO, to get this kind of data so you can start actioning those insights. Questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. That was awesome. Yes, and we do have some really, really great questions from that I've been collecting from the chat. So without further ado, I might just jump straight into it. Chris Lanois, and again, I'm sorry, I really need to hear the pronunciation on that one, but he asked a great question about Yoast Pro. He asked, do you know that Yoast pre-puts the EN underscore US in the OG locale markup, regardless of your local settings, which is a great question. I think a lot of that sort of stuff is a little bit out of the box, but if you have set your local settings, does that change it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can't give you any detailed answer to that one, Chris. Maybe I'll ask you, did you find a way to change that? Or are you saying that's a brick wall, that no matter what you do, you're stuck with ENUS? I'm not sure whether you might be able to follow up with that kind of
I mean, the main way that I think I just do it is editing just a theme file, and it's just there right up in the DOM for the HTML script starts. It was more of a statement. It can't be changed. Awesome.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. That's really, really good to know.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting.
Maybe avoid that one, and get into the code and remove the setting or something.
Yeah. Awesome. I have a slight follow-up of my previous question, which was, what's the right protocol with updating WordPress? I did have a little bit more of a specific question in mind for that one. So sorry about that. I've got a client that has got this just ancient site. It is just it's a dinosaur. I'm surprised that it's even still chugging along, but nonetheless, there it is. And it's got permalinks with the really, really old structure. I think it's like, it's still using like post ID and post name sort of stuff. So, as WordPress sort of does update, there's just a little couple of things that I think one can account for with permalinks. And I know, like, a lot of people can do it like in HT access or with redirects, but I'd really like to know, like, what's your practice, what your best practice of dealing with those sorts of kind of things?
Yeah, I guess what you've raised is some really common headache issues that we face when we're looking at websites that have been either kind of poorly set up, legacy, the website code hasn't been updated for a long time, things like that. So I mean, you've just got to take the plunge. I mean, things like if you're looking at permalinks, URL structure, things like that. First thing I'd be looking at is going, well, okay, is there how much traffic is hitting those URLs? Are there links to those URLs? Those kind of things. If there's not, you've just got to take the plunge, like roll up your sleeves and really just start looking at restructuring the URLs, right? Change that just go in, make sure all the pages and all the posts have got really meaningful names and meaningful titles, and then go and change that permalink structure to something like, post name and something like that. I mean, it's up to people's preference. Some people like dates in the URLs. I don't personally like that. But there's plenty of big sites that are getting plenty of traffic, then they've got dates in the URLs, and there's lots of contradictions around this stuff of how to do it. But definitely, like, roll up your sleeves, jump in, change the permalink structure. But first, I mean, you're getting into the bigger world of SEO here. I mean, you need to do a screaming frog crawl, crawl the site, screaming frog, save all those URLs, get a redirection plan in place to make sure that that you're not going to end up with broken URLs, 404s, all kinds of things. But definitely anything like backlinks, things like that are pointing to redirected. You're kind of bordering on doing a migration, because it's the kind of work you have to do when you do a website migration, because you're changing URLs around and stuff. So, but anyway,
absolutely.
It's, there's a fair bit to it. That might give people a few tips where to start with that one. Is that something? Does that kind of answer your question?
I think it does
specifically for me.
Yeah, no, it really does. I mean, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there of, when looking at updating this and just sort of like seeing all this happen, as soon as I see these kinds of things, I'm like, okay, there's a little bit more to it. So that's where it was like, okay, great. I'll just crawl the website, essentially just, do old to new, and, just use like the simple, like 301 redirect plugin to do it, or, just get like, upload it to the HT access, like all the redirect statements.
I mean, mind you, Nick, you only need to do 301 redirects for. I mean, put it this way, if you've changed all the URLs internally, including from all of your navigation links and all your internal links, then you don't need 301 redirects for those URLs unless they're linked externally. So they got incoming links to those URLs. Then obviously you want to make sure they're 301 redirected. But otherwise, you're really kind of wasting your time. Place for every single internal URL on your site. It's slowing things down. Google has to crawl it and find it and do all these things. So
I've got a bit of a question. Sorry to jump in, but I've got a bit of a question I'd love to ask you, Pete. Plugins. How do you evaluate whether it's going to have a negative or positive impact on your SEO?
Great question.
So there's a few. The first place to start is to figure out which plugins are purely functional plugins for like the back end of your site for you to do things, right? That they don't, they're the kind of plugins that, like we add things to your site or functionality to your website. Lots of themes have this sort of thing as well. But if it's the kind of plugin that makes a difference to the front end, like the kind of plugins that will, like social sharing icons and things like that, code into the page. And, another good example of that is something like Contact Form 7 with the capture, the functionality for the capture, which actually loads on every single page on your WordPress URL, whether or not you need it, right? So there's some steps to take to get that so that it only loads on the page that you need it on. Things like that. But so there's a few things. There's the WordPress health check. I'll be doing that all the time, making sure that just checking the health of your WordPress site, and doing speed tests. There's another plugin I love called WP Asset Cleanup, and what I do with that is I load that on to a site and then pretty much just go for it and really hammer it until the site breaks, and then start backing it off again until it doesn't break. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Actually, you've just kind of like shared your favorite SEO WordPress SEO plugins. What are your favorite plugins, Jake?
Mine, honestly, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with plugins. I generally like to code it myself, to be honest. If look, there are some plugins out there that look. Rank Math is pretty cool. I do like Rank Math. Yeah. It's very promising. The jury's still out whether I would go Rank Math over Yoast. I'm still kind of getting used to it. Yoast has been around for a long time, but there's a lot of stuff Rank Math's doing that Yoast is not really focused on as much as Rank Math is, and I'm pretty impressed with what they're doing. Other things are, it's a very simple plugin, but it's I forgot what it's called, but it's a notes plugin where you can literally take notes on your dashboard within WordPress. And I love that because I've actually created in my affiliate sites, I actually create a hit list. So I have all the articles that I want to publish with the search volume, and I actually go through, and as I do each article, my writer, you wouldn't want me writing. They go through and they tick off each one as they go, and they start from high search volume down. It's very simple but very effective. And I also have like a to-do list of things that I need to do, like some things that I need to come back and fix, so I don't forget it, and initiatives as well. So it's such a simple plugin, but yeah, just like a basic notes plugin where I can take notes on my dashboard. What else? Honestly, I don't really use WP Rocket Cache. It's pretty good. WP Rocket.
Oh yeah. That was going to be one of mine. Yeah. Yeah,
it's pretty good. Pretty impressed. It can stuff with your site a little bit though if you haven't built it correctly. I encourage you to get that plugin first if you've got a new site, and then build. If you kind of do it a bit later, can sometimes do some funnies. It's not fun. But yeah, I think they're like my main ones, I reckon.
I think that's kind of really similar to like that whole suite of plugins, like with Smosh as well. Like if you can get Smosh on your website kind of at the start, then it kind of does everything from then on automatically, which is awesome. But if you get it kind of like at a later stage, like you want to get Smosh Pro, because then it'll do things a lot cool. It'll do historical stuff, and it can do bulk things a lot quicker. So that's kind of nice. For me, like 3-1 redirects, like I do like being able to, it's a pretty much tried and tested one. But you know what, like I've got a couple of international sites, so I'm really loving WPML. If you guys have used any of that, it's pretty awesome because it allows for like really easy to add like new language variations if you want. It automatically implements like hreflang tags on all pages. And it allows for the use of language directories, subdomains, and things like that, or subdirectories, which I much more prefer. So it's super flexible, to be able to have like just to like make sure that the integration is done really well. I think it also really does well with allowing like all the translations to basically sit within the same post page in WordPress as well. So far, so good. I'm really liking that one. It's got a couple of little cons to it, which I don't know. I don't think we should get into a little bit more, but sometimes like advanced query manipulation isn't the best because it's a little bit inflexible, and there's a couple of things that I'm like scratching my head at that I've just kind of like, I'll think of that a little bit later. But otherwise, everything with that plugin so far is pretty amazing. I'm
a little bit old school. I'm a Q-Translate fan, to be honest. I don't know if you guys ever played with Q-Translate back in the day, but I still find it's pretty effective. But it's much more manual. I think Nick, you hit the nail on the head. If you want the 80/20 version, for sure. I think, like I said earlier, I love being control. I love being able to control as much as possible. And I think Q-Translate gives me that. But you have to do the work and you have to get it translated. And there's a lot of things if you miss, it's not fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that also being able to do it yourself, you're doing a lot of testing in the meantime as well, which is a massive strength. So we'll move on to the next question. We've mentioned Yoast a lot. I think a lot of people kind of almost dismiss Yoast as that kind of thing of like, oh yeah, we just chucked Yoast plugin on it, so therefore I've done SEO, which is obviously an absurd statement. But a really good question that I saw in the chat, which was what's not so great with Yoast, and what ends should be done elsewhere. Great question. I've got an idea for that.
Some of the things. I mean, of course, it's not a Swiss Army knife of all SEO, and it doesn't do the SEO for you. But what it just does is helps you to get a lot of those sort of bread and butter SEO things under control reasonably quickly. Like your site titles, your taxonomies. Do you want to no index your tags, redirecting images, attachments to the URL, all kinds of things that that will speed up all that. So, but what it doesn't obviously do is things like it can't help you with the website speed. You're going to have to spend time optimizing, because we know that speed. We're going to have to work on our speed outside of Yoast. A number of other things that it kind of does, and I know actually John Alderson from Yoast, he's working on improving the schema side of things for Yoast. And I know there's some gripes, as Chris Lanous mentioned about, some of the stuff. Look, we know there's issues, problems, but we also know they're actively working on schema to fix that kind of thing up. But maybe have a think about doing that differently. Use. I mean, there's stacks of schema plugins out there. Use one of them and get it to insert the JSON LD markup on the page if you're not happy with the schema that's coming from Yoast. So that's something. Yeah. That's a couple of things.
They did roll out. They just in April they did roll out. I don't know if you saw that, Pete. The bunch of structured data awesomeness they're calling it. But it's still not allowing. I mean, it's still typical Yoast. It's automating as much as possible. I think that's the biggest letdown with Yoast is you don't have much control over what you can change, other than the basics. Which I guess is good if you're like, if you're in beginner stages, but if you want to kind of take it a bit further, you are very limited to a certain degree. But again, I'm comes down to me wanting more control and wanting to change more beyond
There's a common theme here.
Yoast. Yeah. I just like, I like everything perfect,
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
absolutely.
when it comes to plugins for that kind of thing, it can be tricky. But actually, I'll raise one up because I was able to speak with Dixon Jones, and so were you, Nick, as well. When we interviewed
his
him
rank brain presentation. Whew. Oh my god.
Yeah, but just talking about schema and that, because he's also got a project called inlinks.net, and that is schema on steroids. That stuff. Putting that, you put inlinks.net onto your site, and that stuff. I mean, that if you want to really see your schema go nuts, that's the. But
I'm just posting that URL as well for anyone who's really keen to check out that later.
It's a full
Dixon
semantic SEO platform, but the schema that it does, it really kicks on.
Yeah,
I haven't seen this. It's pretty
absolutely.
Cool to check this out.
Yeah, and of course, Dixon Jones is an absolute legend in our industry. If you don't know who he is, he's basically the founder of Majestic, which is a legendary tool
the link
that looks
king.
at the link king. Well, I'm happy to leave it there. That pretty much sums it up. He is absolutely incredible, and so he built that. I would also like to shout out WordLift as well. WordLift is kind of blowing my mind with what it can do, and it completely changed my mind about structured data. I know that this is a WordPress conversation, but my god, if I could just nerd out just a little bit about structured data. With WordLift, the way that it functions is that if you have anything that is in your text, so you see a word, it will pop up and basically be like, hey, can you give a definition to this? And it will basically create structured data and add it to a glossary, and it will basically just start to link everything up. And the more that I looked at the code and the more that I thought about the potential of what it can do, it's actually really amazing to be able to help inform your own content strategy using structured data, because structured data is essentially yes, it's more information about what's on the page, but it also really asks for definitions, and it's kind of asking you to make sure that you can see what the relationship between things are, and it kind of just keeps continually branching out like a living, breathing tree, and any plugin or anything like that will kind of really make me really excited and happy about what the potential is with structured data is always a fantastic thing in my book. So I really like WordLift, which is a bit of a diatribe on that one, but that one's also really, really amazing as well. And hopefully with the new Studio website, I can kind of go a little bit ham in testing more of what that can do. I think, we've got 7 minutes. So I might close off with maybe one last question. Let's look at it, the juiciest question I can find. So what do you do? Oh, here we go. Now this one's a really interesting question about spam and comments on your website. Now a lot of websites will have a comment section, and a lot of those times they can be great. They can really go and create engagements with your customers, but at the same time, it can also open you up to a lot of spam. And in this case, the question is, what do you do if a comment section in your WordPress site, you're seeing the spam manipulate the data in Google Analytics, even after you've tried to go through and tick the prevent visits from bots and spammers? I don't know whether this person has, utilized any plugins or anything like that, but that's a really, really interesting question and a good place to sort of kick off.
Yeah, it's a good one. The spammers are getting up to all kinds of tricks, I guess. At the moment, there's the one where everyone seems to have the Amazon keyword in their Google Analytics. Almost every Google Analytics account I look at, they've got, Christina, who was on the other week, she's got a really great solution for that one. But I don't know, I guess sometimes it's whack-a-mole. You've got to just hunt it down and find out how to filter it out. But for this specific one, if we're seeing that there are, I'm only guessing because I'm just going to use my analytical brain here a little bit and see if it's screwed on the right way. Because if you're seeing people are putting spam comments in, then I'm assuming the only way for that to get into the Google Analytics is if those keywords are getting indexed. I'm just not sure exactly the scenario here, but there's stacks and stacks of spam scenarios. It's just whack-a-mole, kill the bots, kill the spammers, and just keep at it, But don't get too worried about it. Like often, we know that Google Analytics is not a 100% set of data anyway. And so sometimes don't get too hung up on all the, I've had 5 visits from a spam site, or, I'm getting a few trickle visits here or there from some spammy traffic. It's not going to make or break, that kind of thing. But definitely, definitely there's plenty of ways of filtering that out.
Yeah, definitely. I know that, you've been so instrumental in helping some of the sites that I've been managing that have been hacked as well, which is not really to do with spam, but with just like security issues and things like that can be really, really tough to know what to do next. So in terms of that, there's some really, really good plugins. I think when we were going through, we wanted to look at the themes. We wanted to look at any old plugins. Using like plugins like maybe like iTheme security, can go through and make sure that there's nothing spammy that's sort of embedded in like an old unupdated theme that's just kind of sitting on your WordPress site. And there's other things like Encapsula, and there's there's a host of other really, really good plugins that can really, really help as well.
There's lots of stuff you can do. Even getting really good web hosting for your WordPress site, even that can reduce bot traffic and spam traffic from known spam URLs, known networks, right? So that's another thing to do, is pay for some decent hosting, and then that will reduce that as well. Because the people who websites who are offering really top quality hosting are already filtering out that spam traffic, right? So put Cloudflare on your website. Install Cloudflare, set that up. Cloudflare is well known for blocking attack traffic. You can even set it up on different levels to stop rubbish traffic coming to your site. If you're worried about the spammy traffic or malicious traffic, definitely get into Cloudflare. Plus it helps to speed up your website. There's a lot you can do, but
Oh yeah.
The prescribed approach is usually always, it depends. There you go, I said it. Yeah, it's very much scenario based, I'd say, depending on each person's site.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great place to bookend that. Again, with it depends. Look, we're not SEOs on the list. We've dropped that in the conversation at least once. So, thank you so much for your time, Peter Mead. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jacob. It's been absolutely awesome. As a bit of a closing out, I'll go in order of who spoke. So, Jake, how can people reach out and find you after this?
Best place is probably either LinkedIn. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, ask me questions, or just the contact page on Studio Hawk.
Awesome. And how about you, Peter? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, if people are interested in the kind of things I put on Twitter, then they can follow me at Peter Mead AT, or go to LinkedIn and find me there. And ask questions. Contact me. There's all kinds of ways, but I'm also always keen to, as Jake is and as you are too, Nick. We're all really helpful, and if people have questions they want to follow up with after this, always happy to do so.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, guys. It was absolutely awesome. Again, if you want to be able to reach out to them, all their links are in the description below this video. Reach out, ask your questions. I know there was quite a few that we didn't quite have time for, but really, really appreciate all of your guys' times. And of course, you've been watching SEO Meetup here in July. So please, if you really enjoyed that, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and we really look forward to seeing you guys next month. Now, next month we're going to be basically continuing an SEO CMS series. I thought it'd be really cool to kind of have a bit of a deep dive on what the kind of things you can do in different CMSs. So of course, local SEO is quite broad, but it affects so many businesses, and I thought that'd be awesome to have. And WordPress SEO, again, that's over 30% of the web, so that's a huge one from you there, Peter. But next month we're going to have the absolutely legendary Peter Machinkovich, that he's going to go through and basically deep dive, and I know he will, with everything about Shopify and all the things you can do with SEO in there. So, guys, you have to make sure you come to that one. I'm so excited that this is going to be here up live on YouTube, because this is one that I'm really excited to finally be here for. I've missed a couple of his live presentations, so definitely not one to miss. And of course, if you know anything about BigCommerce, Australian BigCommerce, you will have heard the name Tony McCreath. Tony McCreath is an absolute titan. He has been a guest speaker on SEM Rush, of course, speaking about all the wonderful things you can do with auditing, with tech SEO audits. So he's going to be going through the BigCommerce. So, we've even got a comment here. The Shopify versus BigCommerce face-off. Yes.
Yes, please, please.
It's going
to be so epic, and I'm so excited to be sitting here and being able to ask all the questions. So be sure to pop that in your calendars, subscribe, hit the like button, click the notification bell, and I will see you guys next month. Thank you so much for your time, Jake and Peter, and stay safe, guys. Thank you.
See yous.